Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good afternoon. We are going to move to chapter 8 on human resource management principles and practices, and we are referring also this time to the slide given by Prof. Maimunah Aminuddin, taken from the same book, Human Resource Management Principles and Practices. And this is actually the last topic in your chapter, is on industrial relation, and I believe this is one of the most important chapter when it comes to handling grievances and dispute in the workplace. Let us look at the learning outcome for today's lecture. We hope at the end of the class you are able to define industrial relations. You will be able to explain the role played by the Ministry of Human Resource in industrial relation. You should be able to explain the reason why workers join trade union. You should also be able to state the legal requirements to form and join a union. This is also important. You should also be able to explain type of union, define collective bargaining and collective agreement. This is a very popular question during the final exam. And also you should be able to discuss the legal forms of industrial action that may be taken by employers and trade union members, and also explain settlement of industrial dispute. For example, direct negotiation, conciliation, arbitration, and mediation. So let us begin. We are going to look at a visual or a picture on a dispute, on a picket done by the workers in one of the states in Malaysia. So let me read the citation there. Kuala Lumpur, about 200 Malaysian Trade Union Congress (MTUC) members gathered at the Employees Provident Fund (EPF) headquarters today to protest against the recent amendments to the Employment Act. Among the MTUC affiliates which attended the picket were the National Union of Banking Employees, Malaysian Trade Union Right Network, and EPF Employees Union. So this is just to share with you one of the example of a picket and how employees gathered together in a place to voice out their dissatisfaction against the employers. So let us look at the topic in detail. What is industrial relation? So what do you understand by industrial relation? According to Prof. Maimunah, the book written by Prof. Maimunah, industrial relation is the relationship between an employer and the trade union which represent his workers. So that is a very simple definition. Tripartite system in Malaysia consists of, meaning there are three components here: employers and their associations, employees and their trade unions, and also the government. So another definition that we can use also in trying to describe industrial relation is a system that encourages industrial harmony. The industrial relation is there actually to encourage industrial harmony. It is for the regulation of relations between employers and workmen or employees and their trade union, and the prevention and settlement of trade dispute, because dispute is unavoidable. So as human, conflict is unavoidable, and we have to manage conflict. And one of the ways to manage conflict when it comes to trade dispute is to use this avenue, that is the industrial relation. So it focuses on three aspects: relationship between employer and union, employment law, the law is very important, discipline procedures, and terminating service contracts. Why is IR important? Why is industrial relation important? One of the important aspects in human resource, it is one of the important aspects in human resource management. When we study human resource management, we have to look at industrial relation. Industrial relation is to create a harmonious relation between employer and employee. So we have to remember this very important function is to create a harmonious relation between employer and employees, and also to ensure that employees receive fair and just treatment and avoid conflicts in organization. So these are the three important points why IR should be there, or industrialization should be there. And let us look at the role of the Ministry of Human Resources in industrialization, because one of the component in tripartite system is the government. So this is where the government is actually held responsible when it comes to handling the dispute in the workplace. So Ministry of Human Resources, or MOHR, is responsible for preparing the legislation which establishes the rights of employers and employees. So they are the party which actually prepare the legislation. Second, enforcement of labor standards, encouragement of safe practices at work, and provision of training for the workforce. So the last one is involved in settling trade dispute, ensuring maintenance of a harmonious relationship between employers and employees. So I would like to repeat the role, because this is actually very important for you to remember and also to understand. It is responsible for preparing the legislation which establishes the right of employers and employees. Also, the role is to the enforcement of labor standard, encouragement of safe practices at work, and provision of training for the workforce, and also involved in settling trade dispute, ensuring maintenance of harmonious relationship between employers and employees. So people in the workplace do not have to worry about the responsibility of the government in helping you to solve your trade dispute. So let us just have a peek of the industrialization system in Malaysia. So in Malaysia, actually, there, as I mentioned earlier, there are three parties or tripartite system: the employer, the employees represented by union, and the government. And under Industrialization Act 1967, the Industrial Relation Act 97 is used to regulate the relation between employer and employee. So also the code of is good for you to know about the Code of Conduct for Industrial Harmony 1975, because this was introduced to maintain a harmonious relation between employer and employees. So there are 47 issues covered regarding employer and union responsibilities, collective bargaining, etc. And generally, industrialization in Malaysia is controlled by the government. So the government plays a very important role in industrialization. And you should pay a visit to the Ministry of Human Resources in Putrajaya to see why this department is important, because as we know here, IR in Malaysia is controlled by the government. And when we talk about industrialization, it's unavoidable to talk about trade union. I'm going to go into a deeper discussion of trade union. Let us look at the definition of trade union. Under Section 2, Trade Union Act, trade union is any association or combination of workmen or employers whose place of work is in West Malaysia, Sabah or Sarawak. So we are talking about the trade union in Malaysia. If you are to read other international textbooks, they might discuss trade union in their respective countries. So for those taking MGT 340, please try to focus on the trade union in our country in Malaysia, that is in West Malaysia, Sabah or Sarawak. But there's nothing wrong for you to read the trade union that exists in other countries. This might give you additional knowledge on the trade union. Okay, what is actually a trade union? It can be defined as within any particular establishment, trade, occupation or industries, and whether temporary or permanent. And also, when we talk about trade union, the union having among its objects one or more of the following. So, what are the following? One, the regulation of relations between workmen and employers for the purpose of promoting good industrial relation between workmen and employers. So that should be actually the ultimate aim of the trade union. Improving the working condition or enhancing their economic and social status or increasing productivity. So a trade union should always focus on this because they are responsible actually to help the workmen and employers based on the regulation that we have to improve the working condition, enhance the economic and social status, and increasing productivity. Also, when we talk about trade union, the regulation of relation between workmen and workmen or between employers and also employees, okay, between employers and employers. Also, when trade union is also to be responsible to look at this issue, the representation of either women, the representation of either workmen or employers in trade dispute. Next, the conducting of or dealing with trade union dispute and matters related thereto, or the promotion, organization or financing of strike or lockout in any trade or industry, or the provision of pay or other benefit for its member during a strike or lockout. So we would like just to go through very briefly on the definition of trade union and see whether we are not being confused with the function of the trade union. Okay, so within any particular established trade, occupation or industries, and whether temporary or permanent, the trade union should actually be concerned about the following: the regulation of relation between workmen and employers for the purposes of promoting good industrial relation between workmen and employers, improving the working conditions or enhancing their economic and social status or increasing productivity. Also, the regulation of relation between workmen and workmen, between employers and employers. So be very clear about that. The representation of either workmen or employees in trade dispute, the conducting of or dealing with trade union dispute and matters related thereto, or the promotion, organization or financing of strike or lockout in any trade or industry, or the provision of pay or other benefit for its members during a strike or lockout. So we move on to look at the functions of trade union. First, protecting trade union members through collective strength, economic controller, represent employees on issues such as salary and employment contract, support and help employees such as advice and counseling, and benefit, input provided to government on issues related to employees. In other words, they cannot be biased to just the employers or the government. It should actually be fair to all the parties involved in any industrial dispute. So we would like to just move on a bit on reason why workers join trade union. So why do workers join trade union? Why do we have to join the trade union? Definitely the first thing, if you are talking alone, nobody will listen to you. So you have to be in a union or in a group so that people can hear your voice, your complaint, your grievances, and your dispute. So to have a voice, to gain bargaining power, this is more important than just your voice, because if you are talking and there is no power or bargaining power in your voice, then definitely you are actually barking at the mountain. Nobody is going to listen to you. To gain bargaining power and fight for more wages, more benefit, and less work. So always employees would like to have a better life, you know, as they work. They would like to have a more productive and quality life, and this is where they would demand for more wages and also more benefit, and try to be, you know, to reduce the workload given to them so that it will be equitable to their salary. To ensure their employment rights are protected, to show their solidarity with other workers. So if you are in trade union, then you look more united and this is where solidarity will be actually will be reflected in the trade union. To have an opportunity to socialize with other workers. So this is also very important, because by having trade union, you are going to meet many people from the same, what we call, nature of job, and this is where you will share your grievances and ideas on improving the welfare in the workplace. Okay, we are going to have a short break before we move on to the right to establish a trade union. So be patient, we are going to continue after this. Any activities. So if you are going to have any activities before your union is being registered, then you are actually doing something against the law. Application to register must be made within 1 month. Listen very carefully. Application to register must be made within 1 month of the first meeting held at which it was agreed to start a trade union. So remember this, all HR, future HR managers, that you should actually inform this to your workers. A temporary committee may be appointed to carry out the necessary paperwork. So actually, before your unit is being approved by the Department of Trade Union, so you should actually appoint a temporary committee. What about the right to join a trade union? Any employee above the age of 16, remember, any employee above the age of 16 has the right to join a trade union. What if you are below 16? Then definitely you cannot join a trade union. Except the Royal Malaysian Police, the Prison Service, the Armed Forces. These three departments or 3 organizations, they have no right to join a trade union. So besides that, you actually, if you are above 16, you have the right to join a trade union. And what are the restrictions? This is another thing that you have to remember. Employees in public and private sector cannot join the same union. So if you are working in the public sector, you cannot join a union in the private sector, and if you are working in the private sector, you cannot join the union in the public sector, the same union. Okay. Employees in statutory bodies can only join in-house union. So if you're working with statutory bodies, you can only join in-house union. Employees may only join a union covering workers in either Peninsular Malaysia, Sabah or Sarawak, depending where the employee is working. I repeat, employees may only join a union covering workers in either Peninsular Malaysia, Sabah or Sarawak, depending where the employee is working. Combinations are not permitted. So be very clear about this factor. Employees can only join a union representing the trade, occupation, or industry in which they are working, unless the union is in-house. So please bear in mind that you cannot simply join any union you like without considering this factor. Managers, executive, confidential and security staff can only join a union whose members are in the same category as themselves. So also we have to remember this restriction, because you cannot simply join whatever union you feel you like to join. You must remember that which category you belong, so that you can be able to join that particular union. Let us look at the type of unions. So we have here National Union of Employees, we have in-house unions of employees, and we have employers associations. There are 3 types of trade union, and I have some statistics. This might be quite what you call old statistic, but still it is quite relevant for you to look at the membership. 10 years ago, the membership of employees union or trade union, the private sector we have 431,207. And the government we have more than 300 members. and in the statutory bodies and local authorities, more than 65,000, and we have a total in 2007 more than 800,000 members in the trade union. But maybe this can be actually you can project how many it should be in the current year. And out of all these, the statistic in 2005 shows that the largest membership, Malaysia's largest employee unit, is actually the National Union of Teaching Profession, because there's so many teachers, and all of them, normally all of them would join the trade union. So we have more than 100,000. And according to this statistic, next is the National Union on Plantation Workers, and then we have the bank employees, we have the Electrical Industry Workers Union, and we have the Kesatuan Guru-Guru Melayu and the Metal Industry Employees Union, and we have Sarawak Teachers. I just mentioned the name so that you can you are familiar with the nature of the union. We have Sarawak Teachers Union. These are all above 10,000 members. Quite a lot of people actually. Kesatuan Guru-Guru Lepasan Maktab. We have Telecom Employees Union. We have the Petroleum and Chemical Workers. We have Non-Metallic Mineral Product Manufacturing Employees Union. The Tenaga National Employees Union. Malayan Nurses Union. We have the National Union of Commercial Workers and the Transport Workers Union. This is just to give you a picture or the scenario of people joining the union. So you can actually have so many kind of union depending on where you work, and we can imagine the number of things you can do if you are in that volume. So these are all above 10,000 people. And if we were to imagine the force of 10,000 people to solve a particular problem, definitely the number of people in such union will actually give great impact to the effort and decision that you would like to make during your involvement in the union. So it is important to talk about also, when we talk about trade union or industrialization, it's important for us to talk about collective bargaining. Okay, what is collective bargaining? Collective bargaining is a process whereby a trade union negotiates with an employer or association of employers over the term and condition of service of employees. So I repeat, collective bargaining is a process whereby a trade union negotiates with an employer or association of employers over the term and condition of service of employees. So, and a trade union can only invite an employer to commence collective bargaining once it has been recognized by the employers as the legitimate representative of the employer's workers. So when we talk about dispute, when we talk about trade union and its relation, it's very important that the employer and the employees, when they are facing with a dispute, they have to negotiate to come out with an agreement. So this is where the process is actually inevitable and also important in order to solve the solution faced by to solve the problem faced by the employers and employees. We also would like to discuss on collective agreement. A collective agreement is a written agreement. Remember, a written agreement between a trade union and employer or association of employers concerning the term and condition of employment of the employer's workers. A collective agreement is the outcome of collective bargaining. So after you have actually gone through the process of collective bargaining, you come out with the collective agreement. The word collective meaning many people involved in the bargaining and also the writing of the agreement. So what is the scope of a collective agreement? Collective agreement covers all employees in the company. Collective agreements cover all employees in the company concerned who are eligible to join the union. And the duration is a minimum of 3 years. Remember, a minimum of 3 years. What are the content? Terms and conditions of employment of the workers concerned, special provision, facilities for the trade union. So I hope you are going to look at these two terms very closely and see why they are important in actually industrial relation. Let us look at the right to take industrial action. Employees who belong to a trade union have the right to picket. This is very interesting. I've shown you the picture in the earlier part of the lecture. People gather together in front of the building or the employer's building and having picket. And what else you can do when you join a trade union? You can have a strike when a trade dispute occurs. So when trade dispute occurs, you can either picket or strike. But remember also the rights of the employers. Employers have the right to lock out the workers when a trade dispute occurs. Okay. So we are going to just have a look at what picket is all about. A picket is a legal providing. The workers involved are members of a trade union. So if you are not a member of that particular trade union, you are not allowed to join in the picket. A trade dispute between the employees and their employer exists. So if there is no trade dispute, then there's no point for you to have the picket. Okay? It is held at or near the employee's workplace. So you cannot simply go and picket in Dataran Merdeka if you are working in Shah Alam, because the picket should be somewhere around your office or your workplace. It does not obstruct the entrances or exit to the workplace. So if you have a very big gate in front of your workplace, do not have your picket there, because this is actually against the legal providing, and you have to maybe allow people to enter the workplace without any obstruction. It is peaceful and does not intimidate anyone. So this is where, as human resource managers, you should advise your employees on actually the nature of or the legal providing, so that they will not go against any one of these, especially in terms of the peacefulness of the work environment. And when you are actually having a picket sometime under the hot sun, you might be very angry, your temper might increase, and this is where you should be very careful, because if you hurt other people or intimidating the employers or the management, you might not be allowed to go on with your picket, or your picket might not result in any positive solution of the dispute that you have actually experienced. So if you are not having a picket, you can have strike. What is the legal providing? The strikers are members of a trade union. Also same, when you wanted to have a strike, you should belong to the same trade union. The strikers have a trade dispute with the employer. Again, a strike is actually a result of a dispute happening in the workplace. We form with the employer. A secret ballot is held prior to starting the strike. So meaning here, you cannot simply go out of your workplace and have a strike. You have to actually get the members to have the secret ballot first before the strike. And 2/3 of the workers agree to strike. So if the number is actually not amounting to 2/3 of the workers, then you are not allowed to have the strike. So this is very important, because we should have the agreement of every 2/3 of our member in the trade union to allow us to have the strike. The ballot papers must be sent to the Department of Trade Union for verification. So another very strict procedure in actually allowing to have a strike, you have to be verified by the Department of Trade Union. The workers must wait for at least 7 days before commencing the strike. So you cannot simply go out of you are not happy with the workplace or the employers, and you have your strike in front of the workplace. So all this must be followed. A strike will be illegal in the following situation: over an issue relating to the question of recognition of a union. Okay, remember that. Relating to matters in a collective agreement which has been taken cognizance of by the industrial court. So if this is already actually decided in the collective agreement, then you cannot hold a strike anymore. Relating to managerial prerogative of recruitment, transfer, promotion, termination of a worker, and the allocation of duties to workers. So no strike should be held if you are actually being transferred, for example, or you are not being promoted, or you are being terminated. So this is nothing to do with your, what we call this is something to do with managerial prerogative. Okay, so this is where, as human resource manager, also you have to warn or advise your worker if they cannot actually use strike to solve some of these managerial prerogative. After a trade union has been referred to the industrial court for arbitration. Okay, after a trade dispute has been referred to the industrial court for arbitration. So we have a short break, and we're going to continue this to look at the cooling off period. So picket and strike might be something very warm. It can be very heating at certain times. So we are looking at the cooling off period after this, and see whether what else should we know about industrial relations. Thank you. Okay, I hope by now you are familiar with the word pickets and strike, collective bargaining, collective agreement, because these are very important words in the topic of industrial relations, and should be able to look at all the restriction and the scope of this particular subject in relation to the trade union. And I hope when you work later, the human resource manager, you will be able to advise your employees regarding their responsibility if they are to join a trade union. So we're going to look at the cooling off period. When we talk about cooling off period, we're talking about the conciliation meetings, which will be held at Department of Industrial Relations. So if, let's say, conciliation is unsuccessful, the Minister of Human Resource will refer the dispute to the Industrial Court for arbitration. Another concept that you should know actually when to arbitration. So if conciliation is unsuccessful, the Minister of Human Resources will refer the dispute to the Industrial Court for arbitration. Once a dispute has been referred to the Industrial Court, it is illegal for the workers to strike on the issues under dispute. So remember, once a dispute has been referred to the Industrial Court, it's illegal for the workers to strike on the issues under dispute. So the next thing that we are going to look at when we talk about industrialization and the trade union, and also the trade dispute, is the lockout. So if a picket and strike is actually the rights of the employees to do it, but lockout is actually an advantage given to the employers. Lockout is the closing of a place of employment, the suspension of work, or the refusal by an employer to continue to employ any number of employees employed by him. So this is where this is actually the weapon, inverted comma, used by employers to actually in inverted comma also punish the employee. In furtherance of a trade dispute, I repeat, lockout is the closing of a place of employment, the suspension of work of, or the refusal by an employer to continue to employ any number of employees employed by him in furtherance of a trade dispute, done with a view to compel those employees to accept terms and conditions of employment. So I hope the employer will be happy about this definition. So how do we actually settle industrial dispute? There will be direct negotiation, conciliation, arbitration, and mediation. Let us look at the definition of direct negotiation under Part 4 of Industrialization Act. Negotiation is universally recognized as the most efficient means of resolving labor management dispute. In terms of time saved and money expended, negotiation is more efficient than other ways of resolving labor management dispute. So please resort to direct negotiation because it is proven that it is the most efficient means of resolving a dispute. Okay. What about conciliation? This is under Part 5 of Industrialization Act. It is process of arriving at a settlement of a trade dispute with the help of a third neutral party, that is the Director General of Industrialization. So this is also another way of settling industrial dispute. What about arbitration? Arbitration, the definition, when the disputing parties cannot find a solution by themselves or with the help of Director General, arbitration is used to settle the dispute. Arbitration is used to settle the dispute. In arbitration, an impartial party, that is industrial court, is given authority to make decision and settle the dispute by examining information given by both parties. I repeat, when the disputing parties cannot find a solution by themselves or with the help of Director General, arbitration is used to settle the dispute. So in arbitration, an impartial third party, so that is the key or the important word, that is industrial court, is given authority to make decision and settle the dispute by examining information given by both parties. And finally, the word mediation. Mediation is similar to conciliation in that a neutral third party is called in by the parties to the dispute to help them to find a settlement. But mediator is not usually from Department of Industrial Relations. He is a person who is considered unbiased and impartial and sufficiently is respected and trusted by both parties. For example, the politician. So I hope you are familiar with the four words here. The word direct negotiation, the word conciliation, the word arbitration, and the word mediation. We have a short break before we look at the review of the topic on industrial dispute, the settlement on dispute. I would like to go again, revisit the topic on collective bargaining and to look at a detail of the collective bargaining, because this is very important when we talk about industrial relation and the settling of dispute. So remember, we have mentioned that bargaining a process between employer and then employees regarding terms and condition of service or employment. Union will present employees in collective bargaining. Union need to be registered in order to get recognition from employer before representing employees in collective bargaining. And the four important issues usually bargained are wage or benefit, work hours, employment terms and conditions, and also grievances. So also when we talk about collective bargaining, the prerequisite to effective collective bargaining are that the union be recognized by the employer, has adequate financial strength, and members are united. And we mentioned earlier that the outcome of collective bargaining is known as collective agreement. And let us look at the process of the collective bargaining. It begins with what? Ready to bargain. And party involved have to develop the bargaining strategy. Then we implement the bargaining process and the signing of collective agreement. Okay. So we are going to go into this process in detail because you need to be able to explain the process to people concerned when we are involved in the collective bargaining process. Okay. Let us look at the first step, ready to bargain. This is where the union needs to collect information and facts to support argument during the collective bargaining process. Example of information is the employee performance record, overtime record, and overtime record. Union needs to clearly develop objective of the collective bargaining, and union needs to have knowledgeable and skillful bargaining team. So that is the first step, ready to bargain. The second step in the process is to develop the bargaining strategy. Union needs to understand its own power and the employer as well. Union needs to identify the correct and proper strategies to be used during bargaining. Strategy planning should be consistent with the information collected during the first step, and also to take into consideration employer's power, and the final outcome of collective bargaining should be the win-win strategy. I repeat the second step, developing bargaining strategy. Union needs to understand its own power and the employer as well. Union need to identify the correct and proper strategies to be used during bargaining. Strategy planning should be consistent with the information collected during the first step, and also to take into consideration employers' power, and the final outcome of collective bargaining should be the win-win strategy. So we move to the third step, implement the bargaining process. Both sided union employers should be patient throughout the bargaining process. Bargaining team needs to be knowledgeable about employment law and industrial relations system in Malaysia, and union needs to present all the facts collected during the first step. So this is very important when we talk about when you wanted to implement the process. Both sided should be patient. This actually is a very comforting word throughout the bargaining process. Bargaining team needs to be knowledgeable. Also remember that. So if not, you will not be able to win in the collective bargaining. Okay, the fourth step is signing collective agreement. It involves the process of collection of recommendation to be included during signing the collective agreement. Collective agreement should be written in form. Collective agreement should be in written form. Industrialization Act 1967. The content of collective bargaining agreement should be stated clearly using the language that both parties can understand well. The content of collective bargaining agreement should be stated clearly during the language that both parties can understand, using the language that both parties can understand well. So this is just an additional information on the collective bargaining process, because the collective bargaining is actually one of the most important aspect when we talk about industrial dispute and trade union. Okay, we have a short break, and we're going to continue after this to look at other important aspect that is related to industrial relations. Thank you.